The ups and downs in this industry are just extraordinary.
On this week's GMAC interviews, we are delighted to be joined by Ross Garvey, head of Airton Risk, a company that invests in sports betting.
And I'd never been kind of exposed to sums of money like that, so I thought anything with a couple of zeros behind it was significant.
Ross has a fabulous story dating back through his time from bettor, through Paddy Power and Betfair, to his current role.
I was too stubborn. I just held the price.
It's an interesting episode and one you do not want to miss.
Customers only have to find one wrong price or big price for them to win. I have to get every price right.
Without any further ado, here's Ross Garvey.
The All Walks podcast is now in your ear.
Go live! Well, here we are at the lovely Vico Rooms at the Queen's, and I'm absolutely delighted to have somebody I've known a long time who's doing fantastic in the world of sport from a different angle, and I'm really looking forward to hearing your story. Ross Garvey, welcome to the GMAC interviews. How are you?
Good, Greg. Thanks a million for having me. Looking
really
forward to it.
Really delighted you're here. How's everything going? How's life?
Things are good, yeah. Got a 9-month-old now, so it's a different way of living, but it's certainly a better way of living, Greg, as I'm sure you remember.
Do you enjoy being a family man?
I do, yeah, I do. It's life is more structured now, which obviously has its ups and downs, but on the whole, it's definitely a better way of living. That's the way I put it.
What was life like for you growing up, Ross? It
was fantastic. Yeah, sport has always dominated my life, Greg. A lot of my friends still to this day are guys I went to primary school with, and started seeing Sandymount when we were 6 years of age, and we then went on secondary school together and remained very good mates. And the kind of thing that keeps you very good mates has been, in my life anyway, sport.
When I see any of your group, they're all doing very well for themselves. They all are very ambitious. And that doesn't happen unless there's a community or a connection with people around you. And that's a credit to you growing up, where you obviously stayed tight, but you also stayed competitive with each other and you drove each other on to the point that you left school, you started a business degree, and there very quickly you realised, I want to go into the real world, which at the time was bettor.
At this stage, because I'd messed around so much in college, some of my friends had finished quantity surveying degrees and they were going to Canada. And I said, right, enough of this college, I'll go with you. So I went over to Canada with a few of the lads, and we're living together. They were working what I'd call real jobs as QSs in big firms in Toronto. And I was working in the mornings. I used to work in an environmental agency doing filing and,
getting by.
Getting by. So I'd do that in the morning, and then I used to work in a bar in the evening. So I was doing two jobs. I was still broke. I had no money to really do anything. My friends were getting decent salaries, normal hours, all that kind of stuff. It was minus 25 degrees. It was just, I was like, I don't want this kind of to be my life. Being broke, working 15-hour days, 16-hour days. And obviously it was freezing cold, and I hated it. Packed up, came home, back living at home with folks. Took a job in bettor as an operations agent. Now, to put it into perspective, it's a very much an entry-level job. I was clicking a mouse, Greg, as the traps opened in greyhound races to suspend the betting. That's what I did. Click a mouse. Same when the races start in horse racing. When the stalls open in flat racing, or the flag goes in jumps racing, I would click suspend betting. So it wasn't something where you needed to use, let's say, all of your brain. But yeah, it was just one, I actually still loved it. When I look back now, everything's relative, right? At the time, I'd been messing around, I was broke. This was a job in an industry that I was fascinated about, and I still loved it, even though I was just setting, you might be setting up some markets. You weren't doing any trading. You were just operations. That's what you did. And, if I was doing it now, whatever, 14, 15 years later, you'd have a breakdown, because, you cannot do that all day, every day, forever. Yeah. But at the time, it was, I was delighted. I was delighted. I was earning.
You had a foot in the door.
Exactly. And that's kind of been a theme throughout my working life, is that, I realized pretty quickly, you need to listen and learn to people that are doing whatever it is a hell of a lot longer than you. They know more than you. You have to listen to them. They've seen the ups, they've seen the downs, they've been in, adverse positions, and, they know how to react. And even if they don't know for sure, you see the way that they make calculated decisions. And that's, as I said, has been a kind of common theme throughout my career, always learning from people around you. And yeah, I loved my time at bettor. I worked in operations maybe for, I'd say it wasn't even a year. And, obviously I'd made a significant enough, maybe it was a little bit more than a year, but obviously it'd make a significant enough impression on those around me that, I was ready to move up a little bit. So I started working then in trading. So I was trading horse racing and NFL, mainly horse racing on the exchange. Again, really interesting, really fast-paced trading. We had very good models that we used, but you'd be doing a lot of trading in play. So, trying to, say in an NFL game on a Sunday night, it's the 9 o'clock or the 9:30 game, you're tired and there's a lot happening and you're reacting, you're trying to, get your money in where you want to get it in at the right price you're trying to get it in. And, pretty high pressure situations.
Were you dealing with hundreds of thousands of euro at that stage?
Yeah, probably, yeah.
And to explain to somebody who doesn't understand the betting industry, how exactly did your role work? So NFL, for example.
So we would have X amount of money to trade with, in your account, and you would be trying to trade that money. So bet on things happening or not happening, either before the game or after or during the game, and to try and make a profit. Now, it's not an exact science, as anyone that knows anything about gambling knows, but there are ways of trading, such as, say, arbitrage, where for the layman that means buying something at a certain price and selling it at a higher price and keeping your margin in between. And that was great. I loved that. Like NFL, I had to learn pretty quickly at NFL. Those that follow it, I followed it quite closely at the time. I still was no expert on it. There's a lot of moving parts to it, and it's a complex game. Even though to layman watching it, it looks pretty straightforward. It's not, particularly when you're trying to assess probabilities as a game is unfolding. And yeah, that was great. And the horse racing stuff as well. I really followed horse racing closely at the time. I knew my stuff. But again, it's back to the guys I was working around. They just, I learned so much from them. And you're spending, again, back to what I was saying about the camaraderie of people when you're growing up playing sport. When you're working closely, particularly because we were working shift work, because sport isn't a 9-to-5 job. You were spending a lot of time together. You're eating your meals together, you're taking your breaks together, you're sitting right beside each other. You could be sitting beside a guy for 10 hours and you're constantly talking away to each other because there's a lot of action coming in at all times. So you have to be a good communicator to make sure that everybody is moving in the same direction. That if my colleague to my right is taking a position on team X to lose 150,000 and I'm taking the same position on team X for another 150,000, the exposure then is 300,000. And these are important things that you need to be communicating to each other, because all of a sudden, if there's 4 traders trading there and they all have 150,000 euro positions against one team, that's 600 grand, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, is this where we actually want to be? You know,
laid it off.
Yeah.
Do you remember we'll start with your biggest loss, singular loss at that stage?
At that stage, it was small money in comparison to the things that happen in this day and age, which I'm sure we'll get on to. Like, it would be, you know, if you lost 40 or 50 grand, it would be a bad day in those times. But you have to remember that, just to be clear, that, you know, it wasn't an aggressive trading strategy. You know, we were there to make the markets more liquid for customers to bet into and give our customers action. So yeah, it was a lot less aggressive than some of the stuff in more recent years.
And do you remember at that stage, before we go into the Paddy Power part of your journey, do you remember your biggest success when you're starting out as a trader?
It was, I remember the kind of first decent trade. I started my first few days on the trading desk there. Like, you know, you might be thinking that a couple of grand is a huge win. You'd be bouncing out the office, and which, you know, obviously it is. It's serious money, but, you know, when you're on a big scale, it's a rounding error. But, you know, then I was very young then as well, Greg. You know, and I'd never been kind of exposed to sums of money like that. So I thought, you know, anything with a couple of zeros behind it was significant. You know. So yeah, and like the feel, like the you know, and we'll talk a little bit more about it, I'm sure. But the ups and downs in this industry are just extraordinary. Like, and yeah, look, it's, you know, as my wife would tell you, in you know, more recent years, like, you know, your mood can change depending on the results of sporting events. You know, and which is, you know, when I say it to my folks, they're just like, you are insane, Ross.
They can't believe it.
No, they don't. One, they only grasp it a little bit, but secondly, they don't want to know. Like, you're just like, yeah, just, you know, that's your world, you know.
When did you start and how did you start in Paddy Power?
So I started in Paddy Power. It must be 12 years ago. Is it 12? What year is it now?
2015.
2015. So 9. Is it? No, it's longer than that.
Well, my research says.
I think you could
be.
I think you could be a bit off there, because I definitely was. I'm definitely over a decade there.
Was that Paddy Power and Betfair?
So it was Paddy Power initially, and then when I went in working there, it was Paddy Power, and then we merged with Betfair then in 2016, I think.
Maybe that was 2015.
Yeah, 2015. Yeah.
Okay.
So I went into Paddy Power. A guy who probably I'd say I've learned the most from in my career, a guy called Brian Cusack, hired me, and I still bump into Brian a lot, and he still says, you know, this, you know, my interview with him was one of his favourite interviews ever, because I had Brian's a tough taskmaster. He's a great rugby player. Actually played for Bath. He played for Leinster, Bath, and Richmond just when rugby was turning professional. Big bruiser of a second row, proper hard man. And in the interview, he still recalls it as one of his favourites, because I had said, you know, obviously we had tried to bet on something before. I worked for Paddy Power, and they wouldn't lay us in the shops, and you know, they rejected our bet or whatever. And I had taken to Twitter. You know, I'm quite fond of Twitter, and I tend to not mince my words, as you'll well know.
You don't.
I had tweeted something. Well, it actually wasn't something like it. It said Paddy Power are a joke. So I'm in the interview, and Brian said we're going through all the kind of the math stuff and the, you know, how would you approach situation X, Y, all that kind of stuff. And he just hands me a piece of paper at the end of the interview with a screenshot of a tweet, that tweet that I wrote saying Paddy Power are a joke. So I'm just like, has this lad just been taking the piss out of me for the last hour? Like, he's no intention of giving me the job. Like, did he just want to call me in to show me that? But he shows me, and it's like, what he says, you know, what you have to say about that? And I'm there just, you know, deer in the headlights. You know, I want this job. What the hell do I say back? And I was like, oh yeah, Jesus, I don't know what happened there. And he was just like, he said something to the effect of, the internet's forever, be careful. Like, but anyway, after that, he did hire me, and he was very tough taskmaster. Like, I went in, I was getting quite confident, on the verge of cocky at this point in what I did or didn't know. And Brian quickly brought me back down to earth. He was just like, you sit here beside me, Ross, and I'll show you how this all works. Brilliant guy. I went in working as a rugby odds compiler. So my job was to come up with the odds of rugby union matches. So, the match betting odds and the handicap betting odds of, how much a team would win by. So I worked with Brian and another brilliant guy called Declan Keller, who, essentially taught me absolutely everything there was to know about compiling rugby union odds. We lived and breathed it, Greg. The examples, like we lived, we checked the weather apps more than anyone on planet Earth, because weather has such a massive impact on how a rugby match will play out. If it's been raining for 2 days,
Big Pack
are going to dominate, kicking 10. It's going to be a low scoring affair. On a dry day, Team X could be 10-point favourites against Team Y, but on a wet day, they're only 5-point favourites. So it's really like things like weather are like people, kind of underestimate, I think, the impact of weather on sport in general. Like, particularly on the performance of certain teams and certain athletes, in bad weather versus good weather. You see it in certain pitches, right? Certain pitches are tighter than others. Certain pitches have the Astro, the 4G.
They all have big impacts.
Yeah, massive impacts, and they're things that all these small little things go into the compilation of probabilities and odds for sporting events across the world. Like people used to always meet people out socially, and they'd say, Jesus, you got, bang on the handicap draw in the Ireland-England Six Nations game, or in the Leinster Treviso game, or whatever it might be. And they're like, how do you guys do that? There must be incredible models, etc., in place. And while there are models for pricing and trading during the games, we were pricing those games, intuitively. Like we would be the only guys in the world watching Zebra against Treviso at 6 p.m. on a Sunday in December. So the volume of games we were watching, it becomes very much second nature. When you see a team sheet for two teams, you see the weather in wherever the game is on. You see who the ref is. We would have been able to calculate what the handicap should be in that game in a matter of minutes, Greg. And more often than not, we're pretty bang on. Now, like, that's rugby union because it's quite a specialist game in terms of pricing. Things like football, because it's such a more mass market game, everybody in the world loves football, right? So those kind of sports, and tennis are modeled by these genius quants that work in both Flutter and in all other betting firms around the world. Like, these guys have built models based on millions and millions of data inputs to create pricing for not only who's going to win the match, but for 500 other markets within that match. And these guys are just, if you ever meet them, like, they are just unbelievably smart.
At the time when you were in Paddy Power, it sounds like Brian Cusack really gave you lots of tools that you're going to take with you to where you are today. Yeah. But what was your main learning from your time in Paddy Power?
Timing is so important in everything, right? Career-wise, socially, and with timing, luck obviously plays a huge part. And, I'm not going to use that cliche because I hate it, but you have to be able to put yourself in positions where you can be in the mix when there are opportunities, right? And you do that by speaking to other human beings, Greg. being social and being able to speak to other human beings opens up doors. If people, want to spend time with you, find you interesting, respect you, whatever it might be, you have to be able to speak to other people, because it does open up doors. Because it's just like, for me, there's been so many times in my career that I've just found myself just in a situation where, oh shit, this is a great opportunity, like, let's run with this. And that's because, I put it down to, obviously there's an element of luck, but I put it down to because, like, I love talking to people, I love engaging with people, I love listening to people, hearing about what they do, and then in turn, explain what you do, all those things. And that I learned a lot of that, in terms of networking internally at the time in Paddy Power. It was all internal. I didn't deal with any external parties at the time, because we're all, we're trading and we're, behind a computer screen. But internally networking, whether that be up in the canteen or, out, at a up in Leopardstown at the races or wherever it might be, constantly just chatting and talking to people. It's certainly something that has stood me very well over my career, and socially as well.
But it's a really good lesson that I think a lot of kids coming out of school can learn from, because there is the element, you've alluded to it, where kids can be on their phones, they're on their laptops. Getting them to even pick up a phone now, it's all through text, it's all through WhatsApp.
Yeah.
The ability to connect to people in that raw form.
Yeah.
What you're telling me and what you're telling the people who are listening is that is a hidden art and something you need to invest in.
100%. I think, like, it is just as important as the piece of paper of your degree from your university. In my book, you learn so much more. And again, I'm only speaking for myself, and this is again my view, that you learn a lot from people, and of all walks of life, just all different experiences, all different backgrounds from all over the world. Speak with as many different peoples, and like it kind of shapes you and your the way you interact with people. You obviously have your own personality, but it kind of, you learn things from other cultures, other socio-demographics, all those kind of things. It's vitally important, and I definitely always say to people, particularly guys that are in secondary school, etc., like, mix with other people. Don't just mix with the lads you're in class with. Mix with the lads from the other schools, or the people in your sports club, or drama club, or whatever it might be. It can't do any harm. You only grow as a person from the experiences of speaking with other people.
We know you, and I'm really looking forward to getting into the Airton Risks side of it, because I know you tell a fascinating tale. Before we leave Paddy Power, how do you become a political trader?
So I've been trading kind of rugby for maybe 3 and a bit years at that stage, and I was kind of looking to either move out of trading and kind of move up the corporate ladder, for want of a better term. And there was the Irish general election was coming up in 2016, and obviously Trump and the US in 2016. So I was like, there was a secondment there to go and work pricing up politics at the time. And I was like, yeah, I'll have a go at that. It was just something different. I've been doing the same thing for quite a long period of time. I wanted to try and do something a little bit different and maybe get a little bit more exposure internally. So, yeah, like, for want of a better word, the Irish general election 2016 was wild. Like, there's 40 constituencies in Ireland, right? So I had to price up every single person running in that general election in every constituency. Like, so there was hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people to price up. Now, it's all grand in the leafy, like our office up in Clonskee, and people in the various areas of Dublin that you could get a decent gauge of who's a strong candidate, who's not, etc., etc. but, you know, Longford Westmeath. What do I know about Longford Westmeath? You know what I mean? So, like, it was all-encompassing. I was working, like non-stop, you know. I was till 11 o'clock at night for a period of the 3 or 4 weeks before that general election was just insane, because you're seeing all the bets coming in. Like, there's a shop in, you know, West Clare, like, coming in to back some independent candidate, and I have them up at 12-1, and I'm like, geez, they've had that look for 500 quid, and this fella, you know, what's his price like? And just, you know, just trying to just keep a steady head and, you know, figure out what's right and what's wrong. It was just, I loved it. Like, you know, I have a very good friend who's barrister. He's very interested in politics, who, you know, I had him driven demented. Like, I'd be ringing him saying, you know, do you know anything about Joe Blogs in, you know, Tipperary? And he'd be like, Ross, like, I'm walking into court here. Like, I will ring you later. Like, I had people driven demented. Like, because the punters are trying to get an edge on you. They're trying to pick off. You have to remember, Greg, right? Then customers only have to find one wrong price or big price for them to win. I have to get every price right. You know, you know,
very tough.
They can pick you off. You only have to make one mistake and they pick that off. It was brilliant. I loved it. 40 constituencies. Obviously, I'm Dublin-based south, as you know well, and this is a kind of good learning that I kind of took, you know, as my career went on. There's, you know, my personal opinion lost me money lost the company money in this instance, that, you know, I had a very strong view that Lucinda Creighton would keep her seat in Dublin-based south. All the polls were saying different. You know, the money coming in was saying different. Eamon Ryan, you know, I'd Creighton favourite over Eamon Ryan to win the last seat, and I was too stubborn. I just held the price on Eamon Ryan. All the polls are telling me it was wrong. The customer money coming in saying it was wrong, and ultimately everybody was right and I was wrong. And you know, and because I'd worked so hard to, you know, I think, you know, 38 of the 40 constituencies were profitable, and this one and one other were loss making. And it was just like, I said to myself, like, Ross, you've broken your, you know, for the last X amount of weeks, you've worked so many hours, and you've just been a bit pig-headed and stubborn. You know, you have to remain impartial.
Yeah, you have to separate the emotion, the process, don't you? Because you can get attracted in by somebody's views that you really like. You're like, God, they have to get in.
Yeah.
When did the opportunity arrive for you to go to Airton Risk?
Business then was very similar to what it is now. So essentially working with commercial entities that have financial exposure to on-field sporting events. So it can be anyone from a sponsor of a football team to a football team themselves, sponsor of a golfer. So just for, you know, in layman's terms, if you're Manchester United, for example, and again only an example, and they're sponsored by Greg McWilliams Limited.
They're fucked.
So Greg McWilliams pays Manchester United to be on their shirt, right? So he pays them, for example, call it, Greg pays them 2 million quid a year to be on their jerseys, right? But in that agreement with Manchester United, Greg will say, right, you win the league, I'll give you another 2 million. You win the Champions League, I'll give you another 2 million. So Greg has paid United 2 million guaranteed to be on the shirt. But he's 2 million exposed now if they win the league, and another 2 million if they win the Champions League. So Greg's like, right, I have to pay out 4 million quid here if they win both of those, or 2 million if they win either of them. So rather than Greg holding that risk himself, he'll pay somebody like me to take on that risk. Very similar to insurance, but not insurance. So, you know, we will come up with a price on Manchester United winning the league. Let's call it in these days. This time it's probably very, very cheap.
100 to 1.
Yeah. So, we might charge whatever, 200 grand to cover your 2 million exposure. And so the benefit for you is that you can pay me the 200 grand, you forget about the risk. If United win the league, I'll give you 2 million quid. So it allows, our clients to budget with absolute certainty. So they pay a fee up front at the start of the year and they forget about it. I worry about their risk, not them. They've paid a fee and now they forget about it and move on. So they're able, when they're budgeting at the start of the financial year, they're able to put in whatever the number is, whatever they've paid me, that is their fixed cost on that for the financial year. They don't have to worry about the ups and downs every month of the team that they're sponsoring. Job. That's my job. Yeah, exactly.
And what are the main sports that you are involved in?
So golf historically has been massive for us, right? Football is obviously very big. We do a lot of US sports. Obviously, America's the biggest and best in everything. A lot of NFL, college football, NBA, NHL. And then we'll do some tennis. We cover some lottery type risk, which would be kind of pure probabilities, draws or spin the wheel, that kind of stuff, but on a pretty big scale. But golf, golf is probably my favorite of them, because a lot of the golf deals are really interesting, to put it kind of simply. The golf deals are things like sponsor. Again, it could be any of the big sponsors, your Under Armours, Adidas, TaylorMade, Callaway, any of those companies. So those companies in their contracts with their golfer, let's just use a random player. Let's use Colin Morikawa, right? So say Colin Morikawa, for example, is sponsored by one of those clothing brands or one of those manufacturers, yeah. So they pay Colin X amount to wear their gear or use their clubs, right? So he's guaranteed that amount of money. But they'll say, Colin, for every major you win in the next 3 years, we'll give you another $2 million. For every PGA Tour win you win in the next 3 years, we'll give you 200 grand. And for if you finish in the top 10 in the rankings at the end of each year, you get another, whatever it might be, 500 grand. So call it TaylorMade or Callaway or one of these guys, they're running up some big exposure here on Colin Morikawa's performance in, every tournament he plays for the next 3 years. So, again, same thing applies as the previous example. Rather than those guys holding that liability themselves, we will come up with the probabilities of paying out all of these, and we will charge them a fee to then take that exposure off their hands. Okay. So, the golf numbers can get really big really, really quickly. We've done things that cover payouts of like $15-16 million based on, major wins and
FedEx.
PGA wins, FedEx stuff, exactly, yeah. And golf historically has been, as I said, has been brilliant for us. And it's something I kind of want to touch on today. We think there's, we did a piece of work on the live impact, because we kind of anecdotally thought, Jesus, is there, we seen a drop off in golf business since live. So we did a pretty deep dive into the numbers in terms of, how much were we turning over a year in golf business. Are we seeing as many inquiries from clients asking us to quote different risks for them? Are people picking up the phone to me still? Those kind of things. So we went back and looked at the numbers, and ultimately, yeah, it has impacted the sponsors' bonuses in golf, because, and this is my take on it, that if you are an agent of a guy that's gone to live, right, your player is guaranteed X amount of million by going to live, right? So if you're that player's agent, right, you're not really pushing your sponsors for performance related bonuses. You want all, because you've got a taste of getting all the money up front now because of the live deals, you're just saying to sponsors, well, we're getting loads of money up front to play and live. We're not really that interested in the performance bonuses, but we want triple the guaranteed fixed fee that that you're going to pay us to use your clubs. And I think greed's the wrong word, but it's just commercially it's changed definitely in the last couple of years because of Live. And it's obviously like when I say there's been a downturn, it hasn't fallen off a cliff. Like there's been maybe 20% downturn in kind of inquiries and in turnover in golf, but it's certainly down to the Live impact in my book. Like the numbers, as you know, Greg, the numbers floating about is just astronomical. It's just insane. So like what used to be in the pre-Live world, when a sponsor was offering a golfer, bonuses worth $20 million, that was a big number. But now if you're getting $500 million to go and play and Live, the 20 million upside of winning certain events, it's all of a sudden isn't as appealing, which is insane, right?
As we sit here, it is the first day of the US PGA at Valhalla. Yeah. Do you have a big interest?
As big as all the majors are for us. It always will be. It'll always be a time that I'll be kind of watching, half behind the couch, depending on who the players we've covered are.
Sorry, when you say half behind the couch is because it gets to Sunday night and you must be shitting yourself.
Yeah.
Like what's the variation in money that can pass in the last hour of a major?
Like 8 figures. Like you could have a $10 million swing on Sunday night. It's wild stuff.
And do you enjoy that?
Like historically I used to deal with it very poorly. My wife has seen laptops smashed, etc.
What's the most expensive thing that you've broken?
TV. Broken expensive TV.
Just to add to the other expense that you
exactly. Well, I look, that was in the last couple. I've matured, should we say, Greg? In the last number of years,
you're wearing, you're matured in your hair.
In the last number of years, matured. You have to put things in perspective. Like it's generally a pretty profitable business. You can't let one event and one payout, impact you that much, because when you're totting up the P&L at the end of the year, that will be a loss on it, but generally you'll have made X on the year.
Yeah.
Like some of the golf, like there's been some sick golf ones over the years. Like there's one, Gary Woodland in 2019, he won the US Open, was on the West Coast, was it Torrey Pines? Can't remember where it was. And we'd done a deal covering Gary Woodland to win any of the majors in 2019. I was just like, no bother.
He's not winning a major.
Correct, yeah. And Gary Woodland went pillar to post and won the 2019 US Open. And it was on the West Coast, and I was so annoyed that, it was like 11 o'clock on a Sunday in Dublin. I was like, I'm not even staying up to watch the end of this,
What was your loss in that?
It was mid seven figures. Less than 7 and more than 3.
And do you hedge that on a Sunday? You'll never hedge a bet. You wouldn't put $1 million on.
We never hedge because
bookie or anything.
Because there's 2 factors to that, right? One, the amount of work it takes to get these transactions over the line, to then go and hedge.
It's not worth it.
It's not worth it.
Yeah.
And I don't want to hedge. If I, just for argument's sake, if I take a bet at 10 to 1, I don't want to, and then this guy's winning, I don't want to go and hedge that back at 2 to 1 and turn my book red and make, regardless of what happens, you're losing. So it's, and I'm grateful that the powers that be internally, are very supportive of the way we trade the business, and believe in our pricing model and believe in the way that we hold our positions, because over time it is a business. When you behave in the way that we behave now in terms of our strategy, that, you know, the results speak for themselves.
Has your strategy changed much in the last sort of 7 years,
A
6
little
years?
bit since like the Flutter business has scale. Like Flutter is a behemoth now. Like, you know, it was when I joined as Paddy Power, then Paddy Power Betfair, then, you know, it was Paddy Power Betfair, bought Poker Stars, a huge business, Sky Bet, and now all these FanDuel in the US. Like it all now falls under the Flutter umbrella, which, like, the scale of that business is eye-watering, right? So as the wider group has scaled, the Airton Risk business has scaled as well as a division of Flutter. So our appetite for risk and our exposure has increased as the wider Flutter group has gotten bigger. So, sorry, to answer your question then, our trading strategy has changed. Not significantly, but we have altered it over the last kind of 3, 4, 5 years, where there has been instances where we've done deals at big numbers and big liabilities where we've either shared it with a competitor. So say if it was a 20 million exposure, we might only want to keep 10 million of it, and then we'll get a competitor or a partner, should we say, to take the other 10 million. Because there are certain types of risks that we are a little bit more risk averse on. Things like, you know...
So that sounds fascinating. I mean, the Gary Woodall, I remember that Major Sunday, and I was surprised he won. I can only imagine you were. What has been your biggest turn, or, you know, that Sunday night, we talk about Sunday night, you're watching from behind the couch. What has been the biggest turn?
Yeah, so I think it was one a couple of years ago. We had covered a players' rankings at the end of the year for a sponsor's bonus, and it was pretty punchy. It was kind of low, mid to low 7 figures, like, you know, not to be sniffed at.
Yeah.
And it was, what event was it? It was right at the end of the season. You know, it's not a mass market event. Like, you know, I was probably the only person within 5 kilometers watching it. And this player, if they had finished outside the top 10, we would have won. If he'd finished inside the top 10, we were going to lose. And yeah, it was going well. He was kind of tied 28th or something going into Sunday. Fine, everything's fine. Of course, it's playing pretty easy. So, you know, halfway through the final round, I'm like, shit, better watch some of this now. So watching it, yeah, he's one shot back of the top 10, you know, not threatening. Drops a shot, 2 back from being in the top 10, and then makes eagle on 18, finishes in the top 10. We do our dough, you know, all like in an instant, like, you know, it just.
How much did you pay out in that one?
It was low, mid to low 7 figures. I think it was like 4 million or something dollars. Yeah. So yeah, but like, it's hard, Greg, to articulate to people like that you're watching a nondescript PGA Tour event at the end of the season that to everybody else, like, isn't, not to everybody else, but to most people, it's just like, yeah, what about it? And I'm not even looking at the winner of that. I'm looking at a guy finishing in the top 10 of that, which has no significance on anyone else other than the player, the sponsor, and me, and the player's agent, of course. You know, it's such like a tiny little part of, like, the business of sport,
yeah,
right?
Of course.
You know,
but it's still huge,
and it really shows you, like, you know, there's so many interesting business in sport, like there's so many elements within all these sports, not only just player bonuses, but, you know, like, it's like when you're winning or losing your card, like, you know, to stay in the tour, you know, and what does that winning your card mean for you the player personally, for your family, for your kids' education, for your sponsors? You know, there's massive things that seem insignificant to everybody else, bar a couple of key stakeholders in that in that person's performance. You know, it's insignificant to everyone else, but it's massive to those couple of stakeholders. You know.
So again, going back to big event this weekend.
Yeah.
You know, you've got 49 of the top 50 players in the world playing in it. How many players are you actually involved with?
Right now, we've 6 guys that I will be cheering against.
Missed the cut.
Yeah.
He's missed the cut just like, such a relief.
Particularly, and our biggest exposure at the moment is to a guy who his bonus is based on ranking points at the end of this year. And for want of a better word or term, he's shooting the lights out this year. So a miscut from him would be most welcome. Like those, a lot of the sponsors have started putting in season-long rankings bonuses rather than win a major, win a PGA Tour event. They believe that it incentivizes them throughout the season, and they put up a chunky number up top if they do achieve that. But going back to this week, like there would be 2 that I'd be quite worried about. One is that rankings one. Another one is a multi-year deal we've done with a clothing manufacturer on a player and his bonus wins. They get a couple of million every time they win a major. There's some smaller stuff on a couple of European guys where, you know, the bonuses wouldn't be that big. They wouldn't be kind of top tier blue chip sponsors to be smaller outfits. And then there's quite a range this week. You know, sometimes when you're watching these tournaments, Greg, right, and say 2 of the guys you don't want to win are neck and neck in the top, like you would just take the smaller guy winning. Not really, but there'd be say 2 of 5. Say there's, you know, the top, you know, 5 guys within 2 strokes. You might have to be against 2 of them. And like at some point, like you can tell if a guy's playing well. You know, you watch enough golf. Like, you know, some days you'd be like, I would take paying out 200 grand here just for it to be over, and the guy that we're really exposed to not winning. You know, you'd take the smaller guy winning right there and then to just cut the hurt and cut the pain. But yeah, it's like you should come down to my house some Sunday night and watch.
I think I might bring my American football helmet and a bottle of whiskey.
Yeah.
So, do you have any players that are in the top 10 in the world?
Yeah.
More than 1?
2. And that's kind of all I can say on that.
That's great.
Yeah.
But as a company, then there's missing a cut. Those 2 players missing a cut.
Brilliant.
Versus those 2 players, say, being in the top 10 for various reasons or possibly winning it.
Yeah.
What is the difference between paying out 0 and paying out 8 million? Is it that high?
Yeah, like it's a lot of these deals, like the rankings ones, you wouldn't be having to pay out now on Monday. But you would know your position, you know that you're going to start, the way we would account is we would start recognizing losses of revenue or, you know, losses earlier because you know which way it's going, so that at the end of the year, you're not just turning around and going, oh yeah, this is all settled against us, minus X or plus Y. But yeah, like a lot of them, as I said, are multi-year or year-long deals. So like this is only the second major of the year, right? So you're not, you know, say if it's a guy to win any of the 4 majors this year, we're not even, you know, it's tournament starts today, you know, on Monday morning we're only going to be halfway through that risk. We still have 2 more tournaments to play later this year. So we're not banking that cash for another, you know, whatever, 4 or 5 months time. But yeah, like the upsides, you know, you really, for the golf particularly, the golf, you'll see all your upside at the end of major season traditionally. You know, football, end of the season, May, June, NFL, end of December, January. So there's certain periods of the year that are really important for us, which is obviously end of the football, end of the golf majors and end of the kind of US sports season.
So the likes of Aston Villa getting into Europe, being top 4, that, for example, might be a risk that you backed against. You don't have to win the Premier.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That would be quite common. That would be quite common. Like a sponsor might cover a team to qualify for the Champions League.
It's big money.
Massive money. Yeah, massive money. And the football is interesting as well. Like there's a lot like people can cover loss of revenue in that if they get relegated. So say you buy the rights, stadium rights to, I don't know, a Premier League football team, and you pay £10 million for the rights to the stadium. That team gets relegated. Your rights have gone from being worth 10 million to being worth $1 million, if even. So those rights holders can also take cover with the likes of us on a team being relegated, because they're covering their loss, the loss in value of what they've paid for, because their value of what they've bought is 10 million when they buy it. They get relegated, the team gets relegated. What you've paid has evaporated because those rights you won't be able to sell those on for the same amount of money.
Okay.
So there's lots of interesting parts of it, particularly like in European football. Like if you become promoted, and the same in English football, if you're promoted from the second tier to the first tier, right, you'll get a huge cash windfall of TV rights money, more sponsorship money, ticket sales, all that good stuff, right? But if you do not get promoted, you get zero, right? So say if you're in the top of the league, top of the second division in one of the leagues around the world, you can take cover on not being promoted. So you get promoted, you get the big paycheck, but if you don't get promoted, you're going to be guaranteed some revenue. Okay. So it's essentially, clubs can hedge their position based on promotion, non-promotion as well.
Are you interested in the Wrexham story?
I really like the documentary. Yeah, I think it's fantastic.
You've no financial skin in that game.
No, they are a small team without
without
giving it the big one.
You only deal with the big dogs.
Yeah, but we have done small. Like we do. Look, everyone's money is good, Greg. Like it's the same color. Like like we do. Like we would do deals from 20 grand up to 4 million. 20 grand in costs up to 4 million. Like it's all good. You need to do volume. You can't just pick and choose what you want to do. If the price is right, regardless of the actual quantum, you do the deal. Like it's why would anyone turn down money?
So we're here in May now, halfway through the year-ish. How's the year going so far for you?
Been better. We had a pretty significant payout in January. I won't go into the details on it. Because
in football?
No, we can't. I can't go into what it was. 2023 was our best year ever in terms of turnover and in terms of results. 24 we had, as I said, a big setback in January. Things have started to go our way since. We've got some good football results on the continent. I have a pretty big sweat now in Spain for the next, I think there's 3 games left in the second division. And
when you say a big sweat, what's the swing there?
3 or 4 million euros.
And that big loss you had, without going into too much detail, I don't want any detail. It was significant money.
My stomach dropped. Like I was just like,
was it expected?
Fuck no, it was like 100 to 1 chance. And I found out on the Friday. It was actually a lottery deal, and it ruined my weekend. But you don't want it to ruin other people's weekends. That was the biggest payout ever in my since I started doing it.
I hope so.
Yeah, it's a lot of fucking cash. Like
Ross Garvey, I'm so grateful for you to take the time to come in. I learned a lot today, and I want to wish you and Airton Risk all the best for 2024. And of course, let's hope those puts miss this weekend and those 6 players miss the cut.
Thanks, Greg. No, I really enjoyed the chat, and hopefully we aren't. Well, I'm not behind the couch on Sunday night.
I hope you're not either. Want to wish you all the best. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Greg. Cheers.
Produced by the Nero's Future Company.